Hi, this is Bren Masson, host of Freshwaves. April is Organ Donation Awareness Month in Canada. If you haven't already done so, please go to beadonor.ca and register as an organ donor. It only takes a second, and it's a decision you'll never regret. Be a donor. Save a life. Go to beadonor.ca.
Today I'm gonna try to change the world.
And we're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and we're talking with Mary Jo, who's in the studio with us. And joining us on the line right now is Rick, who is the director of the documentary
Tales from the Organ Trade.
Tales from the Organ Trade. And it's kind of sounds like a Disney title, but I can guarantee you it's really not.
You think that sounds like a Disney title?
Tales from the Organ Trade. You think of some little mouse playing an organ and...
Oh, God, no. Yeah.
No, this is a different thing altogether. And the visual on the front of the cover of the DVD is actually quite astounding.
It's a donor.
Yeah, it's a donor, but he got paid.
That's correct. It's actually a gentleman from the Philippines who sold his kidney because he was in desperate need of money. So, we took pictures. We filmed in the Philippines and in lots of places, in Turkey and of course we filmed in Toronto with Mary Jo.
Yeah, you filmed in Toronto and around, and
well, there's 4 stories. I was the one person in the film that was still on dialysis versus, Rick can probably tell you more about the people that she used in the stories.
She used.
Well, no, I mean, I was the one who kind of waited for a transplant versus somebody who goes through the process of purchasing one and what that looks like.
Yes, and purchasing, is that still a thing, or did your documentary kind of just blow that whole thing out of the water?
Well, I mean, it's always been illegal, and I mean, I shouldn't say it's always been illegal, but it has been illegal for quite some time, and it's still illegal. And actually, it wasn't just the film, but what was interesting is when I started making this film, I thought it was really a black and white issue of exploitation. And then we met Mary Jo and started to understand really the realities of what it's like to be on dialysis, to try and have a regular life while you're on dialysis. And if you are someone who is in your 60s and you're a man, in your 60s, the chances of you getting a kidney, there's such a dire shortage of organs, the chances of you getting a kidney aren't that great. And as you continue to survive on dialysis, your health actually gets worse. So this is kind of what propels people towards the black market if they have the wherewithal and the funds to do it. So one, it was a bit of a revelation to me that it wasn't always evil people and exploitative people who were just trying to take advantage of the impoverished. It was usually someone who was absolutely desperate in the West who suddenly said, wait a minute, if I can find someone and pay them and I can make their life better and they can make my life better, maybe that's an equal trade. I'm not trying to whitewash the issue, but that was a revelation to me when I started meeting people who were considering going overseas, that they weren't kind of, evil incarnate. And Mary Jo felt like most of us, that it's unethical, and she was going to wait it out. And Mary Jo is very lucky, but also young, healthy. I mean, when you see Mary Jo in the film, I mean, Mary Jo, you're incredible. Just you have a child, you have a special needs child, you have a family, you're at the center and the core of your family, not only of your own family and your child, but also your mother. So you take on quite a lot, and you were able to do it while on dialysis, and you were able to do self-dialysis at home. So that is, a combo that isn't all that common, right? There's lots of people going to dialysis centers, being stuck for 6 hours, who aren't as healthy and vibrant as Mary Jo was. Anyway, I can babble on about this for hours, but basically, in making the film, you go ahead. You ask questions.
Well, I was just going to say that when I watched the film, it's exactly what you said. I went in there with the attitude of, this is wrong. There's nothing that can ever make it right. It's just darn wrong. And I can see how it would just be totally exploitive of people who are really impoverished. And then when you think of all of the strict regulations that someone as a living donor here goes through in order to make sure that they're healthy enough, that they eat the right things, that the organ is at its best. But these people are starving to death in a third world country, living in a shack in squalid conditions. How can their organ possibly be as good as it needs to be? And I had all this preconceived notion of what I was going to see in the documentary. And then when I saw the documentary, I thought, completely differently.
I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what happened to me. The documentary, in a way, arcs my own experience, because the film I made prior to this was about sex trafficking, and there was no moral ambiguity there.
No.
It was just black and white.
Yep.
And traveling through Turkey and filming in Ukraine, that's when I came across the concept of organ trafficking. Not that it was new, but that's when I became more kind of cognizant of it and thought it was worthy of making a film. So I thought it was going to be the same kind of going down that same dark road. But as I kind of meandered my way through that world of organ trafficking, it made me question all of my kind of previous thoughts about what is moral and what isn't moral. For example, if you are willing to give your organ, if I was willing to donate my kidney to somebody, I am considered heroic, and I would be, like you said, properly tested to make sure I was an appropriate donor and that I wasn't endangering my own life, never mind making sure the kidney was good enough for a recipient. But if there was, the minute money exchanges hands, it completely changes that transaction. Mm-hmm. And that became very interesting to me, because I thought, well, if I was impoverished and I couldn't feed my kids, maybe selling my kidney isn't the worst thing in the world. It's better than prostituting my daughter. It's better than living on the streets. So, I mean, it was just such a weird transition. And I don't want to, I have my own conclusions, but what I wanted to do with viewers is have them just take a look at it and really see, what it's like in that world, and come to your own conclusions. But I mean, there was some criticism of the film because it wasn't a complete, it wasn't a whitewash of the black market, because the black market is by definition bad. There's no checks and balances, no one's properly tested, but because it wasn't an out-and-out condemnation, basically. Through Mary Jo's family, well, one of the reasons that Mary Jo, first of all, I adore her and she's a superstar, but I think it's through Mary Jo's experience and her family experience that I think viewers start to really understand the meaning of living with kidney disease. And it was integral to the film and to the emotion of the film to understand how challenging it is. Because if it was just a question of taking a pill, like, you keep your blood pressure down by taking a pill, if that was it, then, you wouldn't even consider going overseas. I mean, Mary Jo didn't consider it anyway, though it's something that we talked about. But it was really important to understand, because even I didn't understand. I knew what dialysis was, kind of, but I never really understood what it does to the body, that you have to do it X many times a week, and how life-altering it is. Right. To have to endure that.
Well, I think that's one of the best things about the film, is that it's so multifaceted. Even when it comes to the story of the couple who did buy from the black market, they weren't horned, winged devils sitting in there that you could kind of think of them as the villains who are adding to this whole, what could be a problem of black market organ dealing. They were regular, nice people. They were really nice people, both of them. They were desperate. They wanted a life, and they have that life now.
Well, and they weren't trying to take advantage of anybody. I think the idea, and this brought some light to me as well, is I thought, okay, if I'm going to pay, I am going to make somebody's life better. And I think what I saw in this film, because I hadn't seen it until it was out there, the people who you think are getting the money are not. And I think that was part of the thing that I didn't understand. And
the brokers.
Exactly. Like, there were so many parts to this that just aren't well known. And that's one of the parts I really loved about the film, is it exposed that part. Mm-hmm. And showed it's not black and white.
Like, if you were going to, just as a figure, I'm not even sure what the number is, but say you were going to spend $50,000 on an organ, you would expect that money would go to the person donating, or the majority of it, when in fact it doesn't.
But that's the part of the problem
with the black market.
Well, no, and the part that it's illegal. I mean, what if there is somebody out there who does want to give you a kidney? And this happened to me. I had 2 people who wanted to donate, and one was a single mother. So part of her issue was that she would have to take probably 6 weeks off of work because it's actually way worse on the donor than it is on the recipient.
Right.
And how would she pay for it? And so because I'm not able to give her any money because it has to be an altruistic donation, she couldn't do it. And then I had another friend who wanted to donate, and then he was going to be canceled from his life insurance. Because if he, so these are the things that people don't think about. I think it raises the question of whether it should be legal or some changes need to be made to the system in order to allow people to actually donate, but be able to take care of themselves after they do. You know what I mean? This is why the black market is flourishing. You know what I mean? Because we don't have options. To be honest, if I had to go down this road again, I don't know that I would spend another 9 years on dialysis. The thought of doing that now scares me.
Yeah.
It scares me. Yeah. Especially as an older person. And I can appreciate Raul in the film, at that stage in his life, not wanting to wait a decade to get to possibly get a kidney. Possibly.
Yes, possibly. That's the key word.
Because who knows what his health is going to be like by that time.
Right.
I was still young enough. And I was 32, I think, when I got my kidney. So imagine now if I wait another 10 years, I'll be 50. What's my health going to be like then? And am I going to be a healthy recipient? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So there's so many things to consider here that are being ignored, really. Right.
I agree, and it's interesting because when I spoke to look, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, right? I'm not an ethicist, and I'm not a surgeon. But some of the people that I spoke to in the States, I ended up pulling all of the experts out of the film and keeping it stories. But some of the experts who were arguing for a regulated system in North America were saying that basically the way they envision it working. I'm not promoting this. I'm just
you're telling a story. Right.
Yeah, I'm telling a story that let's say there would be a kidney bank so I would go and I'd say to this kidney bank, I'm happy to give my kidney and you give me money or pay my mortgage or whatever the powers that be would deem ethically less complicated, and they would test
just compensate me for the 6 weeks that I have to take off at the very least,
or even more than the 6 weeks. I mean, this is their argument: is make it worth someone's while, since we have such a dire problem and it's such a cost to the system, and we're willing to pay for dialysis. We're paying everybody to be on dialysis. It's worth. You save money even by compensating people to the tune of $50,000 or $100,000, whatever that threshold would be. But that I would say I'm going to give my kidney, but not sell it on the free market. I'm going to get tested by this kidney bank, and they're going to go, you know what, her kidney is perfect. And then they would find a match, and everything would be anonymous, but it would be the state that would run it. Now, obviously, that has its own problems, but that's how they deem it, kind of finding an ethical way to make it work, because then my kidney would be given to the person most appropriate on the list, who's the closest match, who's been on dialysis the longest. But it's not a deal that I would be making privately with somebody.
I think that's brilliant.
The problem is that nobody who's going to go to sell their kidney at the kidney bank is going to be affluent, right? So it's kind of, are we comfortable with impoverished people going to offer up their kidneys? We've gone away from selling blood, right? We now donate blood. We used to sell blood, but then there was a movement saying it's unethical and the blood you're getting isn't as good. So the fact that we think about donating blood, that was a concerted effort by a lobby to make that the norm. So all these questions, it was so fascinating for me to get inside all of it, because there's no easy answers.
No.
But you can bob back and forth. And, I spoke to some very established, like a philosopher from Oxford who was basically absolutely 100% for a regulated compensation system. And she is so highly respected, but that's such a controversial view. And she also kept saying to me, well, why are you okay to take my kidney, but it's not okay for me to benefit in any way. Why does the doctor benefit? He's getting paid for the operation, and the nurse and anesthesiologist. And even the recipient of the kidney benefits by getting a new life. Why is it so verboten for the person giving it to profit in any way? So it's like, wow, I never thought of it that way. It is true. Everybody, so again, for me, I feel actually that it's a great example for ethics classes and medical ethics and legal ethics to discuss these kinds of things, because there's no easy answers. But when it comes down to life and death, this is what, when the film came out, and Mary Jo came to some of these, we did a lot of talks or Q&As after screenings and things like that. And I don't want to take a stand, but as a human being and as a filmmaker, I kept thinking, if my daughter, for example, if it was life and death for my daughter and I couldn't get her a kidney, would I consider buying a kidney, even though I don't like the idea? And the answer for me was yes.
Absolutely.
Because it's life and death. So I thought...
And it's personal.
And that's what I said. That's what I challenged everybody in the audience who criticized it. I said, you just have to ask yourself, what would you do in a life or death situation? I mean, I'm not talking about, killing somebody to get a kidney. I'm not talking about that. That I wouldn't do, right? That's unethical. So that was for me the turning point when I put myself in Raoul's shoes, like you just said, Mary Jo.
Yeah.
I mean, you were young. If I was, 60-year-old man and my chances of getting a kidney were nil, and basically it was like this is my life, or I can go and try and compensate somebody. All of these guys want it to be legal so that their recipients are properly tested and compensated and followed up with, So anyway, it's really food for thought. And I just challenge anyone who takes an absolute stand to watch the film and not feel, both for the people who need the kidneys, but even for the impoverished, where they go, yeah, it sucks that I have to do this, but it's better than my other options. So, I mean, I think if we eradicate poverty, that's even better than having to sell your kidney, obviously. But, the reality is that life isn't that simple, Well,
and I think also it would you have to consider the fact that a lot of these, there's a story in there too that shows the one guy who donated and then didn't have proper follow-up care. Like if this was more of a legal route, then at least they would be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. And he ended up getting really sick. He was really sick.
Well, and it wasn't properly tested. And, so those are the other things you have to be concerned about. If you're desperate enough to have to go down this road, what are the risks that are involved now because you've been pushed into this situation?
Right. And then he ended up with kidney disease in the only kidney he had left.
Well, and he donated a diseased kidney.
A diseased kidney was donated. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but think about what it took for somebody to have to go down that road in the first place.
Yep.
It's terrible. And also, I mean, there are many cases in India where you have some impoverished villager selling a kidney by some unscrupulous broker or doctor, getting $500, having a huge scar instead of them doing it laparoscopically like they can now, and then going back to the village and it gets infected and they take all their money they can't work because they're laborers and because the scar is so big, and they end up no further ahead because it's black market. So there are terrible stories as well. And anyway, that's what I think made the film kind of more interesting, more complex, raised a lot of questions. I mean, obviously the best solution they're working on, I was going to say fake kidneys, that's not the word, but lab, kidneys that are made in the lab, not electronic. I don't know
stem
the word
cell.
for it.
Stem cell?
Pardon me?
Stem cell? Like they're trying to...
Either stem cells or even
grow.
Just a fake, just like they make heart valves, right? Like if they can come up with something else, there's another solution, that's great. But in the meantime, I spoke to the World Health Organization and they were talking about prevention because people are eating really badly in the West. Kidney disease is on the rise. The demand is going up, not down. And they're talking about prevention, and prevention is eating better, less sugar, whatever you need to do to keep yourself healthy. But prevention doesn't help people who are now, in dialysis centers. And it's a very complex issue.
Yeah, there's no straightforward answer, but I think again, one of the best things about this film is it gets you to think. That was the whole point of it.
Yep, it certainly does that. And it does educate.
Yeah.
It does educate. I mean, even just knowing a more realistic look about what dialysis really is.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Well, and like I said, I've been contacted over the years by all different types of people, and not just people who want to offer me kidneys, but also people who are already on dialysis and waiting, and who were inspired to see the story and see that I got a kidney at the end of it, and sort of see that they're not alone. And I mean, I've kept all these letters and, emails that I've received. And it's, this is because, I was approached by a director to promote awareness, right? So, and it's gone around the world. So it's a pretty amazing thing. It
really is. Well, we have to take a little break. It's just a minute or two. And Ronnie, if you wouldn't mind hanging on the line, we'd love to continue this conversation right after our quick station ID and stuff. You're listening to Fresh Waves on Whistle FM. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Bren Masson, host of Fresh Waves. April is Organ Donation Awareness Month in Canada. If you haven't already done so, please go to beadonor.ca and register as an organ donor. It only takes a second, and it's a decision you'll never regret. Be a donor. Save a life. Go to beadonor.ca.
Today I'm gonna try to change the world.
We are back in the studio on Fresh Waves. We're wrapping up another amazing show about organ donation. I can honestly say that the month of April has opened my eyes to things that I have never thought about in my life, to sadnesses and tragedies that I don't like to consider because they're uncomfortable, but to inspiring stories that I can't tell you how are so inspiring, that make me smile, that make me leave this studio and think, wow, I want to jump up and click my heels together and say, isn't this a fabulous world? It's a total roller coaster. I can't imagine what making this film was like, because, you're wallowing in the black trade and then the black market, and then the next minute you're kind of talking to Mary Jo about dialysis and things. And at the end of the film, we get a little snippet of the fact that, before this film aired, Mary Jo did get her transplant. And Mary Jo now. And it must be just wonderful to know someone who just loves life so much, and you can see it in her face and in her eyes.
No, Mary Jo's a remarkable human being. Like I said to her, normally when I make films, I don't end up becoming friends with the people. I mean, you end up very close, but you don't, life moves on. But Mary Jo is a completely special person. And I am kind of so grateful that I had the opportunity to meet with her, but for absolutely this joie de vivre that even was apparent before the kidney. And also she just astounds me, her simple strength and her just zest for life. You're absolutely right. So, when you think about whoever she got that kidney from, man, has it been put to good use. I mean, Mary Jo, you've embraced it, you've traveled, you're an amazing human being, but also an amazing advocate for this issue. It's not just that she got a kidney. Mary Jo speaks in schools, and awareness is so important because people just don't know, right? That's why I love making films. We all kind of communicate in our own way, but it's like, how do you get word out? When you get word out, then people become attuned to specific topics and open to more, to discussions and maybe open to donating or open to lobbying or open to becoming involved. So we need more Mary Jo's.
Oh, see, you know why I love her so much.
She's very complimentary. Well, the people I've met in the last month are certainly incredibly inspiring, and it warms your heart. And I think donors need to know how appreciative, or the donor families, when it's a cadaver donor situation, the donor families need to know how appreciated that act of kindness and the gift of life, how precious it is.
Absolutely. And even, what was interesting? So even when I tracked down, like, part of the film, one big thread in the film is following this black market operation that happened in Kosovo, where, this was truly an international organ trafficking ring, where the recipients were flown in from all over the world, as were the donors, as was the doctor. So I was trying to track down all the players from one single operation. And that was a revelation to me, too, because when I tracked down a doctor, he's called Dr. Frankenstein, who's the Turkish doctor. He's known as the most notorious organ trafficking doctor in the world. He's like a guy who thinks he's saving lives. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't disingenuous when I interviewed him, but it's true. He is saving lives. I mean, that was the kind of irony, is that, you know, everyone goes, he's making tons of money, and he is making money. There's no doubt about it. But he's a brilliant surgeon in his own right. He's acknowledged by his own peers in Turkey as being one of the top surgeons in Turkey. So it's not like he wouldn't have made a living if he didn't do the black market.
He also put himself at risk by doing it, though, right? He's wanted by Interpol, He's still wanted by Interpol, by the way. He's on the run. I haven't been able to get hold of him since the film was finished. I've tried, because I wanted to send it to him. I did get it to the Israeli doctor who was involved and who also spoke in the film, who has been indicted since on other charges, and you know, but it's an interesting world where it's like the evil guys were saving lives, and the kind of self-righteous doctors who were saying this is illegal and it's exploitative were actually resulting in people's deaths. And it mixed me up, but it makes for a very, you know, interesting, filmically it's interesting, but also I really did feel it was important for people to feel that when they watch the film. I mean, it's a very good story too. Obviously, you make a film, it's got to be interesting to watch, but it made me question my own ethical assumptions, and I think that's a worthwhile endeavor.
Well, Mike, I watched it over the Easter weekend, and let me tell you, to put on a film that's not a funny love story or something when you've got the kids all home from university, and, you know, the youngest is 20, and they're sitting around and they're, okay, let's all watch a movie. And I say, yeah, we're going to watch Tales of the Organ Trade. And they're like, what? Oh no, Mom, not another one of your documentaries. And I said, no, you got to watch this one. Well, they all pulled out their phones and their tablets and started playing games and not really watching. And I looked around the room halfway through, and they were all watching. It's spellbinding. It's spellbinding. It is.
That's good to hear.
It's one of my daughters did health sciences at Waterloo, and for her it was just an ethical bag of just, I don't know, pros and cons, and
it's eye-opening.
Wow, it really is. It really is, because that doctor was very convincing when he was, even though you had to read subtitles, telling about, that's one of my pet peeves. I hate subtitles, but, you know, it does let you understand a language like Turkish that you don't normally get to hear. But it was, I felt for him. I understood what he was saying. I still don't know whether I believe it or not. Like, whether I can say,
you can see the point of view, though.
But I could see what he was saying.
Yeah.
What an ethical conundrum.
Well, it's a perspective thing, right? Like, because you don't really see it from another perspective until you see something like this.
Yep.
Right?
Correct. But also, by the way, the other thing he said, which I can't remember if I had put it in the film or not, but there's a lot of other complexities. It's just there's so many things you can't do in a film. For example, if you're a parent, because you're allowed to give an organ, if you're a parent or a sibling and you need an organ, if you have 4 kids and 3 of them are parents and gainfully employed and one is a little bit of a ne'er-do-well, who do you think the pressure is on to donate a kidney? So there's all sorts of other ethical issues that people don't consider. And you know, surgeons told me that they have an out when there is a family member who's being put forward as a potential recipient. The doctor will have a private meeting with them and say, do you really want to do this? Because if you're feeling worried or you don't want to, I will give you a medical out. So the doctors are willing to lie because there's an understanding that there's undue pressure sometimes.
Yes, on the member of the family that's not producing the most.
Or doesn't have children.
So I'm just saying, you know, there are a lot of things to consider. Is that okay? Is that ethically correct? You know, and the doctor from Israel had said, you know, he saw it happen before where suddenly the kid who donates a kidney gets a condo from their parents. I mean, meaning we're not controlling everything we think we're controlling. So, you know, I mean, I hope more people become aware of this issue and at least sign your organ donor cards, because obviously, never mind donating live, but so many people have not signed their donor cards. The chances of you giving your organ are actually, I think, lower than the chances of you needing one, because you have to die in a certain way and it has to be an accident. You have to have a healthy organ. But the fact that we don't have a system in Canada where it's assumed that everyone's an organ donor upon death is beyond me, to be honest.
Me too.
Very strongly about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for ending on that note, because I think that's a good note to end on. I think the whole purpose of the last 4 shows that we've done throughout the month of April is be a donor. Go to beadonor.ca.
At least educate yourself on what it is.
Yeah. Register. Read what they have there. They have a whole Mythbusters section. If the question that you have to ask is not answered, right, send it to them. Send them the question and they will answer it.
100%.
If you don't want to do that yet, go to my website, freshwaves.ca. Plug into any of the shows that we've done in April. Last week on the 17th, we did the hard questions. We asked the Trillium Foundation the really tough questions. The questions that you think that you may not say out loud. But they're pertinent questions. And I had people who wouldn't even Facebook me the question. They came to me in person and said, and it was in a parking lot, at the back of a parking lot, at the forest. And they said, okay, here's my question. Can you get the answer? And I gave them the answer. And we did it live over the air, because I think they're not the only ones who have that question. Right? So, yeah. It's a good discussion to have. Thank you so much for making the film. Thank you for talking to us this morning on such short notice. We really appreciate it. And boy, would I ever like to have you as a guest to talk about all kinds of different things, including filmmaking in this country.
Just call anytime.
Well, we'd love to have you on again.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot, Ricky. We really appreciate it.
Bye, Rick.
Right,
bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for another episode of Fresh Waves. I'd like to say thank you to Mary Jo. This is the 2nd year in a row that you've honored us with your presence on an organ donation show. We're really, really happy to have you. And I'm very blessed this year to be able to speak to you in a one-on-one situation where we got to actually find out about you. And thanks for doing that film. That was really brave of you, and it needs to be acknowledged.
Thank you. No, I'm actually honored that I was a part of it, because it was an eye-opening experience for me as well.
Terrific. Patty, thank you for stepping in for Jay.
No problem.
Jay, we hope you're fine, and we hope to see you next week. And everybody, go out there. Please go to beadonor.ca. Sign the registry, or register, because you don't sign it anymore. I'm so old school.
It takes 2 minutes online. Literally, it takes 2 minutes. Or anytime you go in to get a piece of ID, you could do it there as well. And any government ID, you can sign up as well.
Terrific. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care. Be kind to one another. That's an Ellen thing, but I can snag it, because you can't patent that, So be kind to one another. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the spring. You've been listening to Fresh Waves, a Whistle FM production. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and our technical producer is Jason Rumball. Tune in every Wednesday at 10 a.m. for Fresh Waves here on Whistle FM, 102.9 on the FM dial and whistlefm.com anywhere in the world. Fresh Waves is available on podcast too. Just go to whistlefm.ca or freshwaves.ca. We podcast all of the Fresh Waves shows so that you can listen at your leisure. Fresh Waves. It really is